This is Cal Knight, and I'm welcoming you back to my channel as discussing anything games related or the like. And I'd like to touch back on something else that I've had thoughts on, and uh, obviously, as the picture you see here, this is the Joseph Seed from Far Cry 5. Uh, just the was it yesterday, last night, this morning, whatever. I had a comment or a commentary about Far Cry 5 and how is there a conspiracy theory and stuff about behind the scenes and stuff. But there's another thing I'd like to discuss, and that is should Joseph Seed have been put to death? And I'll try and present a case as to why I think that. Uh, it's the Far Cry 5 ending was a little bit uh, disappointing, to say the least. And if you look online, there's been a lot of people who've said such thing. And one of my reasons why I like to delve a little deeper into this is, yes, he's an evil man, he's all this stuff, but I'd go a little deeper and say just why this guy deserved to be put to death. Yeah, I know this is a fictional character, and and all, but that's this humor me on this, and let's cover this a little bit. So first off, this guy's he's always pontificating about how it's your fault, especially at the very end. It's your fault that everybody's dead. And I had he's saying I had this this big grand plan and stuff, and yeah, he did have a grand plan and all, but it was evil to say the least. He had people working for him who were grand manipulators, either through drug use or through music or other mind control things, or just plain brute force. And these are the type of people that he had working for him. And here he's wondering why people are resisting him and all this. If I saw a vision of the future where nuclear holocaust was about to occur, I wouldn't go about it in a brutal manner to try and save people. Did Noah go around forcing people on his ark? Did he go around punching people and brainwashing them and all this to try and get them on his ark? No. He had his family, and he had a bunch of animals, and that was it. They got sealed in the ark by God, and if you were in that ark, you perished. He could have gone that route. Maybe found some fertile women. Have some different women of different nationalities, and locked himself into a vault and said, attack with you guys in the outside world. I'm gonna be happy, and I'm going to have my people. But no, he did not do that. He goes around, and one of the first things that you see, there's dead people all over the place. There's people who've been hung and strung up and just brutalized. What are you trying to? What was he trying to accomplish here? It's just insane. And I'm probably gonna go and step on a few toes in the psychological realm. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't play one on TV. So if I get the technical terms mixed up, understand I'm not a psychologist or whatever. I'm not somebody who studied this in depth or anything. I just, from what I've seen in reality and stuff, That's what I'm going to be basing this commentary off of. So, what exactly is wrong with this guy? Well, first of all, like I say, he uses brutal tactics to try and sway people to his cause, or he tries to use a blissful, fake drug to get people to just fall in love and feel all mind numbed and whatever. That's not reality. You need to have your people based in reality to be able to really actually function. People that have been on this bliss drug for too long, they lose their mind and become these like human zombies. Easily manipulated, of course, but that's not a way that's not something to base your society off of. There's another guy, one of his other followers. He's John, I think his name is. He liked to carve one of the seven sins, or many of the seven sins, into people's flesh, and then cut it off or whatever, when they confessed or whatever. And really, the seven sins are not actual sins. It's not really technically a sin to lust per se. Now, if a man lusts after a married woman, then he's committing adultery in his own heart, and as Jesus says. But just lust in by itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It's like a person hungers doesn't just automatically make him a glutton. It's a desire to procreate in essence. Now, who you desire to procreate with, that's another story. But you know, uh, lust by itself, or the desire by itself, is not the desire to procreate in and of itself is not necessarily a sin. Anger, Jesus says, the man who's angry with his brother without cause, he's risks, the fire or the judgment or whatever. That doesn't mean, though, that you can't be angry at somebody with cause. If somebody nails your hand to a board or something, you'd have some reason to get a little bit angry or upset at the guy or woman or whatever. So anger by itself is not necessarily, even in I think it's Psalms, where it says, where there's or maybe it's Ecclesiastes. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I'm trying to think about this, but it says, there's a time for love, a time for hate, a time for war, a time for peace, all that stuff. It's even a song based off of that, which comes right out of the Bible, the Old Testament. God's saying, there is a time for people to get angry. There's a time for people to be, um, to bring peace, to try and mend fences and stuff. And the one sin that the John puts on the rookie's chest, whatever, is wrath. Well, wrath by itself is not necessarily a bad thing either. There's divine wrath. God's angry at people and therefore pours out his judgment on people. That isn't a sin. Um, there are times when divine wrath or righteous wrath is necessary, or is a necessary good thing. And I would argue that the rookie has a good case, a good point to be a little wrathful, because he's seen his friends or his colleagues or people he's worked with get brutalized, and people trying to manipulate them and stuff, and you're going to get a little pissed off if people do that to your friends and family and close acquaintances. And I would say rightly so. there's just because you present wrathful or actions or whatever does not by itself mean that you're committing a sin by doing it. It could be said that these seven sins are a type of sin. You got your lustful sins, which are your desires for people that are not uh, lawful to have relations with, sexual relations with. You could say that um, that's a type of sin that falls under like lust or desire, or to desire or lust after objects and stuff, to covet another person's goods or wife or whatever. But again, the seven sins are not necessarily actually sins that are actually in the Bible per se. Gluttony. Oh yeah, it does say that if you're apt to uh, eat heavily or whatever, don't go to uh, it's better for you to slit your own throats and go to um, a feast, when you're a gluttonous person, but of course, obviously, I'm not saying per se, go and slit your throat, but they're saying, it's better for you to to do that than to present yourself as a gluttonous person in public. So, these seven sins by themselves are not really actually sins based off anything biblical, um, not in themselves. That if a man desires a woman who is a married woman, then yeah, he's committed adultery in his own heart, and that's what the Greek word for woman is. It means a married woman. I have to look it up and show you and stuff the verses, um, but that's what the word for um, Jesus doesn't add anything to the Old Testament. He's clarifying a lot of cases with his teachings. Just because if Jesus touched on something on one area, it doesn't mean that all the rest of the areas are are null and void. It just means that certain things needed clarification in their day. The Sadducees or the Pharisees or the lawyers and stuff were making a mess of the law, and he needed to clarify a few things. And one being that if you desire a married man's wife, if you desire a woman who is married to another man, then you are in your heart committing adultery, especially if you know that she's a married woman. Because when you desire something, you're more likely to commit that sin. You're not going to steal something without coveting it first. You're not going to look at it and say, "Oh well, I'm just going to grab that." Well, you don't grab it unless you think that there's some value to it, or some value that you'd get out of it, out of the object or thing that you're stealing. So of course, this Joseph Seed, he goes about this all wrong. He's beating people up. He's uh, he's drugging people. He's brainwashing people, and he expects us to just roll over for that. Our character. No, and that is why I feel that the end of the Far Cry 5 is such a letdown. This guy, he's always pontificating about I've missed I miss Faith. She was such a beautiful girl, a beautiful woman, and she was dear to me and stuff. Well, you were she may have been dear to you, but she was drugging people. You expect people to accept a woman, a girl. It doesn't care God doesn't care about what you look like. He cares about what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're acting. He doesn't care if you're a pretty girl, or an ugly girl. He said, Jesus says, do not judge. Or I think it's Jesus, maybe it's Paul, but it says, do not judge by appearances, but judge righteous judgment. Just because somebody looks beautiful or charismatic or whatever means they should get off when somebody else who's ugly, gets the book thrown at them. You don't base the law off of what somebody looks or how pleasing somebody is visually. You have to judge righteously and in God's law, God's rules and stuff. You know, it's Joseph's seed. He's in the storyline. He's blessed or cursed, if you want to look at it that way. Is he sees a glimpse of the future, that there's going to be a nuclear war or whatever, and it's going to be devastation and all this, and he goes about it all the wrong ways to try and prepare for it. Now, okay, yeah, sure, he's wants to try and grab as many people as possible. He's looking for people who might have some skill or ability or hardiness or something. I don't know. But again, you don't just go around killing people. You don't just go around doing this stuff and claim that you're doing it because God told you to, or God says that this is righteous or something. Heck, this guy, his probably the biggest sin is pride, because he's got people singing his praises on the radio and stuff, and everybody's oohing and ahhing or what the father says, and this character, Joseph Seed, the father. Well, that right there is a little blasphemous, because in the Bible it says call no man father except for God, because God's your father in heaven. You could have a biological father who's the father of your body, but you don't call somebody in a religious context father, your father. This is one of the sins of Roman Catholicism. They call their priests father and stuff, when that's very specifically told not to do that in scriptures. So there's that. He has this pride, this proud persona, and here he is lamenting the loss of it all at the very end, because you came along and you destroyed it. You're a rookie, a deputy by the end, who is granted law enforcement powers to to uphold the law. One could say God's law or man's law or whatever, but your character, it is he is lawfully placed in that position of power or responsibility, and this guy is a self-proclaimed father, reverend, whatever, who is actually quite wicked in and of himself. He shows a little bit of compassion for your character, staying the hand of John or whatever, who wanted to beat you and drown you and stuff. But he shows compassion to your character, but not compassion to all the other dozens or hundreds of other people that he slaughters and locks up and all this stuff. You know, so this is just one reason, but especially when it comes to stuff like murder, you have justifiable homicide. That's a homicide is when you kill somebody. Justifiable homicide is you've killed somebody for justifiable reasons. Number one reason being that you're trying to save somebody else's life, or you're trying to defend yourself. Those are two big reasons why you can get out of a charge of homicide if it's justifiable. Somebody's trying to kill you, you're trying to defend yourself. And that's why all throughout the game, when your character is facing the cult, these guys are armed. They come after you. They try and kill you. They kidnap you. They beat you up. Sometimes they'll throw you out and let you live. Other times people have to rescue you and get you out. But what the cult's doing is not justifiable. They're killing people. They just slaughter people for apparently no reason. Just go into people's homes and houses and properties. They go out there and they slay livestock. One of the missions is to save a farm that's uh, the cult's taken over, and they've killed off a big chunk of the livestock. Apparently for no other reason. I mean, they're not doing it for food, and it's kind of sad to a point because here the cult is trying to Joseph Seed and all his leaders and the cultists themselves. They're killing people all throughout the valley, this Montana Valley, wherever it is, and they're supposedly trying to prepare for a nuclear attack. They're killing off people who are going to be farmers. They're killing off people who have underground shelters. They kill off people who are um, farmers, ranchers, all these people who have skills that would be useful in the after effects of a global catastrophe. They're not um, they're not trying to save cows or other livestock. They're just locking away people, and they're hoarding food too. But they're not. They like in a couple of the bunkers of the bad guys, particularly John. You have these green containers of bliss. How much space could they save to put towards food, water, livestock, etc., if they wouldn't have just gotten rid of the bliss containers? You could throw in a lot more water, or supplies for cleaning water. But no. Instead, they're going to they're going to have these storage containers with bliss, this mind control, mind altering drug that puts people in a stupor. How how is that logical? And then, of course, everybody in the end, they're all, "Oh, he was right. He was right." Well, he was right that there was going to be a nuclear catastrophe. He wasn't right about how to go about preparing for it. How much heartache could have been saved if he'd taken a different road, a different route? that's why, by the very end, you go through, you're fighting him, your friends are being used against you, your friends, colleagues, coworkers, whatever, and you have to rescue them from his clutches, and then you're expected to just let him walk away or let him take him to justice. I mean, you've killed his three underlings. Why hold judgment against him? He's no better than those three. Those three, he was the overlord, if you will, of those three characters. He obviously loved those three characters, even though they were doing some horrendous things, and he was even a partaker of some of it. In the at least in the first part of, I think it's John's missions or character development, storyline activities, or whatever we call them. He's seen there, uh, watching how your character is being treated, and the other characters. They're in essence being waterboarded right in front of his eyes, and he stays the hand of John just for your character. And he berates him a little bit at one time, about how your character is supposed to live, or to hold back on the judgment, or whatever it was he was doing to you or your character. But he's still privy to what's going on to everybody else. He knows what's going on, uh, what's being done to your friends, your family, your coworkers, your friends, at least your coworkers and stuff. He must know that the girl causes the marshal to commit suicide after betraying, causing him to betray the those who were held up at the prison. So he is a co-conspirator in this group. Um, Personally, I think that the way it could have or should have had, you should have had an option to end it. Yes, maybe you have the one thing where you can spare his life, supposedly to take him to justice or whatever, to be tried, and then the nukes go off and everything happens at the end. Or it would also be a poetic justice. You put a gun to the guy's head. He's guilty of so many different crimes and stuff. And things have fallen apart. You put a bullet in the guy's head, and the nuke goes off in the background, and then that could be the end of the story. Yeah, he's right, but he's had judgment uh, cast upon him. Uh, that would have been a lot more fulfilling. Personally, really wouldn't care. I think he's an evil enough character that it warrants the death penalty for him. It doesn't matter whether or not he foresaw a nuking of the country, because everything he's done has been pretty much to put him as the head of this cult. And they're not singing the praises of God. They're not singing the praises of Jesus. They're singing the praises of him. They're singing his praises. They're singing his glory. He's this wise and glorious person. Well, that's BS. He's not that wise. He's just a lucky guy who's either he's had a premonition, or maybe God originally, gave him a chance to see the future. But in my opinion, he just completely blows it he, because everybody's fighting him, nobody's preparing for the star nuclear attack. He's not trying, even at the very end, he wants you to surrender to him, even though you're in control. You're in essence control of Valley by that time. And most, I went through and I had control of every outpost that's it's possible for you to get. By the time I went to, confront him, and yet he wants you to join him by his side, or whatever, and then laments at the very very end that you killed everybody he loved, or whatever. He puts on you the burden and the blame, just like John. John tells you, well, just say yes, just say yes. Well, and then they beat the reverend, or whatever. And they blame you for the reverend's plight, or whatever. You are the problem. You are causing the problem on the reverend. No, it's the people who are beating the reverend who are causing the reverend's discomfort. They're just trying to put the blame on you for your lack of cooperating with their idea of what um, for not cooperating with their program, or whatever we call it. Sadly, that's how a lot of people on the left and stuff, they get so full of themselves that they can't see their own failings. They can't see their own faults. They think that everybody's guilty of stuff. They see racism in other people when they themselves are racist and stuff. People who are abused. Their abusers will say, "Well, this is your fault. This is your fault. You're being abused. This is your fault for making me doing this or that or the other thing." They say that is a classic tactic of abusers. This man, he is an enabler of that mentality in his followers. So of course, ultimately, he deserves to get a bullet in the head. It would be a poetic justice for the way he caused your character to. Um, he gave your character over to the Jacob in the north, who uses brain and mind control and music and stuff to try and get you to kill the resistance leader. Um, it would be, like, say, poetic justice if that was actually his end, because he produced you, he molded you into a killer. It would be poetic justice to have that killer unleashed on him, because he enabled it. Um, he he was the one instrumental in causing you to kill someone in the game. It is therefore, like, say, he's an accomplice to murder of, I don't know, dozens, hundreds, thousands of people. It's because of his antics that the people of the valley aren't prepared. Now there's at least a dozen little shelters. Excuse me. There's at least a dozen shelters where you find the lighters of Vietnam veterans. Um, there are the shelters out there for people to hunker down in if they were allowed um, to live in their shelters, and they weren't tracked down and murdered and brutalized by this clan and this cult. So in essence, he is guilty for all the hundreds of people who are killed. He is guilty for his cultists ultimately getting destroyed because justice comes in the form of the rookie, your character. So, in my opinion, it's like an avenging angel that, through hardship, comes out in the end to judge the wicked evildoers, the cultists, who are everywhere, every time. They're brutalizing people, they're kidnapping people, it's just completely bogus. It's completely evil. It's just unfathomable at how bad these people are. Now they don't necessarily say why there are people all around the place with hoods over their faces and executed, but that's not a sign of somebody who's benevolent. So ultimately, it would have been more satisfying in the end to just be able to put a bullet in the guy's head and have it done with it. You fought him, you've beat him. By all accounts, he should have been bleeding to death, but from all the gunshots at your characters and your character and all your helping characters, um, you know, uh, the that you have to go through. You in the last battle. It was just, the guy, by all rights, by the time that battle's over with, should be bleeding out and ready to die. He's not somebody who's going to be strong enough to just, pull you out of a burning, wrecked vehicle in the middle of a nuclear holocaust. Not to mention the fact that everybody's breathing in the fallout. Him and your character, him and your character. And one of the things that's really dangerous about a nuclear explosion is the fallout it creates, like nuclear iodine or something. That by ingesting nuclear iodine, radioactive iodine, that damages your thymus, I think it is, and it makes your whole body go haywire because it's not getting the right balance of bodily chemicals, whatever. Brain dump of the exact word, but what I'm trying to say. So, does Joseph Seed deserve to die? In my opinion, yes. He's been instrumental in the deaths of dozens, if not hundreds, of people. He's been privy to tortures and other acts of cruelty. The guy's just he's a bad dude. It doesn't matter if he gets sniffly eyed and stuff about losing those he loves, because those who he loves are also committing those same grievous uh, illnesses. Same grievous acts, as I should say. But yeah, it would just been so much more satisfying, even if the nukes still go off in the background or whatever. It would have been just so much more satisfying to put a bullet in his head and be done with it. And those are my thoughts. If you have your comments, your concerns, your ideas about should he have died, should he have been executed, um, feel free to leave your comments. Thank you again for listening, and this is Cal Knight signing out. Thank you.